white blood cells say, whoa, you're not supposed to be here, gobble up the aluminum, carry it all over the body. White blood cells can get through the blood-brain barrier. When they die, what do? They release that aluminum into the brain, where it causes massive inflammation. Almost every autistic brain is massively inflamed. If you wonder why kids are banging their heads and so irritable, their brain is on fire.
Brain hurts.
It hurts. It's on fire.
Today is an exciting day. We have Dr. Thomas here. He's actually one of my mentors and one of the real heroes that I have looked up to from the day I heard about him and his mission. He's really doing amazing things in this world, and he has put God first in front of money, in front of fame and fortune, because he knew the information that he discovered as a doctor was more important than the amount of money he could receive from an insurance company. And we had the privilege of having Dr. Thomas at our school today, Center Academy, talking to parents about his findings from his amazing study that he ran on his practice. This is real world data. This is serious stuff. And you can actually see that full presentation. If you just click on the link below, you'll be able to see all of the PowerPoint slides. We're going to talk about some of them in this interview, but if you want to see all of them, please click on that link. It's valuable information. And it really is information that I wish that I had 9 years ago. I didn't have access to it, but I was just blessed that my gut told me, and I received signs from God to not vaccinate our girls, and I just went with that. But later on, when I found you, I was just like, it was all the confirmation I needed that I had made the right decision. And my mission, my passion is really to help parents out there who were as scared as I was, because the medical industry really, really tries to instill that fear in your soul that if for some reason you don't inject your baby with these drugs, these pharmaceutical drugs that you will see in our show actually list an adverse side effect of death, that your child could die from a disease that just doesn't really exist. So thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Layla. It is so great to be on the Layla Show. I have a challenge with that hero thing, but I've wrapped my head around it. And here's why it's a challenge. First of all, I don't feel like I did anything unusual. So I'm a father. I had 3 biological boys. I adopted a bunch of other kids. And my last son wasn't doing very well neurologically. Sort of a little autism spectrum. That was in the late 90s. That's when I started going, what is going on here? You know, thinking, asking questions, doing my own research. Then in my practice, I had 4 years in a row, a 1-year-old become severely nonverbal, no eye contact autistic by age 2, following vaccines. And it was like, I can't do business as usual. Others have said, but other pediatricians haven't done what you've done, so you are a hero. So if that's the definition, you're willing to stand up for the kids, yes, based on what I saw, then I'll accept that. But it feels like everybody should do what's right for the children when you see it.
It feels that way, but
right.
You stepping out in front, literally giving up your license for the greater good of humanity, in my book, that is the definition of a hero. And I hope that maybe this show inspires other doctors to critically think like you did and push aside, you know, just the indoctrination that they learned in school, because I don't really blame the doctors, because they really, really were brainwashed to believe.
Oh, absolutely. I thought I was doing the best thing I could do as a pediatrician to follow the CDC schedule. Yes. Who was I to question the smartest doctors out there, supposedly, right? I thought these are the best of the best that go up to the CDC and the NIH. So I didn't question.
But hopefully this show inspires other doctors to question, to use your brain, critically think, and ask yourself, is it right what you're doing? Don't just blindly follow like we learned during COVID, right?
Right.
The people that blindly followed and got the COVID jab are now suffering the consequences for that. And we'll get into that a little bit later.
Right.
But, you know, one of the slides that really grabbed my attention this morning was conflict of interest
Mm.
that doctors have. Let's pull up the screen, the pediatric conflicts of interest. And I want you to explain that, because
Yeah.
I've heard so many moms say, why would my doctor lie to me?
Right.
Why would the American Pediatric Association lie to me?
Right.
So let's talk from the doctor's perspective, and then I want you to tell us a little bit about the APA, because I don't think people understand the stronghold that pharmaceutical companies have over the APA because of all the donations that they make.
The
So
AAP,
let's focus on that.
American Academy of Pediatrics.
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember a mom asking me one time, this was before I'd really realized the magnitude of how we were being coerced to vaccinate. And I had a mom say, they're paying you to vaccinate. You're making a fortune on this. Oh, I said, oh, no, we're not. It's a tiny markup. And I left it at that, and I didn't even investigate it. And then it started to hit me when I started realizing how much money was coming back through a number of mechanisms. There's not just one way. So what I've covered on the slide that you all will probably be seeing on the screen here, let me first start off by just saying, in 1986, they passed an act that took liability away from all pharmaceutical companies, but also all doctors, nurses, anybody involved with administering a vaccine. If your child gets injured, there's nowhere to go for any kind of compensation. The Childhood Compensation Act of 1986 set aside some money, but it's pennies. And it's like you have to prove that your child was injured, and they won't believe you. It's near impossible to get any money back.
Well, that's, I don't mean to jump around, but that's why they give babies at day one the hepatitis B shot, because you'll really never know if they're injuring them from the time they're born. But
yeah,
sorry,
that's another whole, why we do that is insanity outright. You catch hepatitis B from sex and IV drug use. Babies don't do that. 99.9% of moms in America do not have hepatitis B.
Yeah.
Why are we injecting 999 babies out of 1,000 for something they will never be at risk for until they're either sexually active or sharing dirty needles?
Yeah, and if they're worried about the mom having it, it's a simple test.
Yeah, well, they do it anyway.
Yes.
It is routine to test moms to see their hepatitis B status, so we know going in there is zero risk for this baby. I sleep like a baby as a pediatrician. I never recommended that vaccine because it made no sense.
No sense.
But here's the thing about how pediatricians make money. Well, I emphasize there's no liability. So right there, I'm free to do whatever I need to do, right? Mm-hmm. And my office manager seems to think that this is really important that we do these vaccines. Just like hospitals felt it was very important to intubate and give remdesivir for COVID. They were protocols. Mm-hmm. There are quality measures for pediatricians. Almost every insurance plan has one. And it for pediatricians, you can count on it. It involves how well you vaccinate. So if you don't vaccinate well, and they'll set their standard at maybe 60, 70, 80% of their 2-year-olds should have all the vaccines. Mm-hmm. If you don't meet that standard, you are a bad doctor. Mm-hmm. There can be penalties. So the penalties can actually be a percentage of everything you do in your practice. Or you lose contracts. I lost a couple contracts from really important insurances in the Portland, Oregon area where I worked because my quality measures were not good enough. Mm-hmm. I had the top measures in saving money, not doing unnecessary x-rays and medical tests, minimal hospitalizations, but my vaccine rate was not good. Well, when you have, those of you who remember getting grades in college and you have a GPA, well, I had A, and an F in my vaccine rate, so I'm a bad doctor. Yeah. But here's how we made money. And when it hit me how much this was, it explained why in my practice over the years, I had fewer and fewer patients choosing to vaccinate. And I allowed that because that's informed consent. That was the one thing in my practice, you couldn't work there unless you allowed parents to do whatever they want to do once they've been informed. So my job was simply to inform parents, you do what you wish. Yeah. Well, I started making less and less money to the point where I had to do a cut across the board for every staff member just to survive. I went months without taking any money. By the time I ended my practice, I was making less than a McDonald's burger flipper, $13,000 a year.
Because basically the insurance companies were cutting your rebates.
So here's how the money I was losing. In my practice, you make money by a slight markup on the vaccine. Mm-hmm. So let's just say it's $5 per vaccine. And I've got this on your slide. I had 30 newborns a month, so there's 12 months in the year. So 30 times 12 times 5, and each newborn gets 24 vaccines in their first year, the way they're compensated for by insurance companies. That's $1.6 million just on that little tiny markup. Now there are admin fees. These are huge. They're different. They vary insurance company to insurance company, but generally around $40 for the first antigen, $20 for each subsequent one. So at a 2-month visit, there's about 7 or 8 antigens. At a 6-month visit, it's up to 10 antigens. Basically, in the first year of life, each of those babies for my practice was a cha-ching, $1,000. Thank you for giving the vaccines. It's called an admin fee, administration fee. And then there are bonuses. And we use the example of the one from Blue Cross Blue Shield. In 2016, it was a $400 bonus per baby.
Dr. Thomas, I actually have that document.
You have that document.
And Alex, I'd like you to put it up on the screen a little bit later, because it shows the actual rebate on an insurance document that I'm not even supposed to have.
Right. It's on their Blue Cross Blue Shield document from 2016, and it lists all the vaccines that 2-month-old is supposed to get, or I'm sorry, by age 2. Yes. It's a massive number of vaccines. And with that kind of incentive, it'd be hard not to try to be reimbursed for, now get this, doing the right thing. Yeah. This is how pediatricians would justify it, because it's a quality measure. The CDC says this is what we're supposed to do. And if we get a bonus, well, that's just a attaboy, good job. Yeah. And of course we should try to get our bonuses.
Yeah, and from the way I read the schedule is that if you don't have at least 85% of your practice vaccinated by this schedule that is a complete toxic load, you get 0 bonuses.
Correct. There was it might have been 67% or something, but there was a threshold at which you wouldn't get anything. And so that's massive pressure. So what started happening, and you're aware of this, pediatricians started kicking patients out of their practices if they wouldn't follow the CDC schedule. And wow, in the Portland, Oregon area where I was practicing, I saw that all the time. Weekly, I was getting 3, 4, 5 new patients. And these were generally families who had a vaccine-injured child. So you're going to the doctor, you're following your doctor's instructions, you're following the recommendation to do all these vaccines, and your child becomes severely autistic, nonverbal. What do you do when you have your next kid?
You don't vaccinate.
You don't vaccinate. You're not going to make the same mistake twice. You saw it right before your eyes. And so the pediatricians say, oh, no, that's just a coincidence. And they totally blow it off. And then the American Academy of Pediatrics changed their philosophy and said it's okay to kick these people out because they are not being responsible parents. That's the philosophy of the Academy of Pediatrics.
So with the new administration coming in, I am super hopeful, and I am praying every day that they change that. I will tell you, for new mothers out there, if you call a pediatrician and they tell you you are not allowed in their practice if you don't vaccinate your child, run. Because your baby is just a dollar sign. They do not care about the well-being of your child. They are chasing that dollar. And if there's anything you get from this episode, it's that. To ask the question before you even go, and if the doctor tells you, I'm sorry, run the other way.
Yeah. In fact, I coach parents who are wondering what to do about vaccines. And one of the things we coach, Dee Dee Hoover, my partner, also coaches on this, is when you're looking for a pediatrician, you should call the offices that are near you, make a long list of every practice that's near you, and make this phone call and ask, do you allow parents in your practice who choose not to vaccinate or only want to do some? And if they say no, you have to do them all, next. You do not want to be under the care of a doctor who follows guidelines that are archaic, that make no common sense, and that are outright dangerous. And we're going to cover some of those dangers in our conversation.
Yeah, so basically, based on this chart, I mean, 1.6 million gone, 1 million gone, 400,000 gone. That's $2 million in revenue that you decided to forego because A, you gave all your parents informed consent, meaning you actually told them the dangers of the vaccines. When you go to most pediatricians, they will not even tell you that there's a possibility.
No, they're safe and effective, don't
you
know?
They won't tell you that death is a possibility, or they'll tell you 1 in a million.
Yeah.
Which, from your data, is just a big
Serious
scam.
adverse events are 1 in 20, sometimes as bad as 1 in 10, not 1 in a million. And that's per package insert from the actual companies that put out these vaccines. This 1 in a million thing is an absolute lie. Vaccines are exceedingly dangerous. But to wrap up the money incentive thing, the data I showed you was theoretical. I actually published an article that showed in my practice alone, a practice of 15,000 active patients, we were losing over $1 million. So some patients were still getting vaccines. This was theoretical if you did none. I was losing over $1 million, billing just under $4 million. You cannot survive if you're losing 30% of your revenue because pediatric overhead runs about 80%.
That's high.
That's high. And so that explains why practices probably won't survive if they don't vaccinate. And I think the office managers know this. Yes. The pediatricians, I think, just don't want to look. Because if I look, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Yeah. What do I do now? I can't. How do I survive?
And ignorance is not justifiable. Putting your head in the sand, acting like you don't know, that's not an excuse.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
15,000 pediatric patients. And this is over, what, 30 years you've been in business?
35 years as a pediatrician, 14 years in my own practice. But even when I was in my group practice before that, I was getting about 30 newborns a month, sorry. And most pediatricians, the ones I was in practice with, were getting 1, 2, 3, or 4 newborns a month. I was bringing in 30 newborns a month. Patients wanted informed consent. Patients wanted a doctor who's thinking critically, who's willing to say, at that point, I had written a book called The Vaccine Friendly Plan in 2016, and I was trying to do my best. Well, at least there's got to be a safer way to vaccinate. We cannot be doing Hep B for newborns. That made no sense. I'd seen 4 babies regress into autism after between 1 and 2 after the MMR is given. So we came up with that plan. The new book, Facts, that some of the data you're going to see that we're going to talk about here, this really expresses all the vaxxed, unvaxxed data, and some of this is going to blow your mind.
It's going to blow your mind. It blew my mind.
Yeah.
So let's get into that. What I'd like to go over is, let's go over the next slide. So, when you go to the doctor's office, you can ask to see the vaccine insert for whatever vaccines they want to give your child. That is one thing that you can demand.
They may or may not give it to you. What I would recommend is if you are contemplating getting vaccines, find out from your office what brands they carry. It does matter. Some are much more dangerous than others. Package inserts, which show you everything that's in these vaccines, are available online. In fact, if you go to vaxfactsbook.com, just scroll down that main page. I've got a link to every package insert there is.
I love it. So let's go over an example of one that we have on the screen here, because I want you to, as a mom who feeds our 2 girls fully organic.
You read labels, right?
I read every label. I don't give them foods with food coloring, preservatives,
right.
and I see a lot of crunchy granola moms
reading labels,
who read
right?
labels, and when I ask them if they've ever read the label for a vaccine and they look at me and tell me no, I say, but how can you not?
It's overwhelming, but it's not that difficult.
It's not, but something as simple as formaldehyde.
Yeah.
Where we're told if you are around formaldehyde, you should not breathe it in. You need to run the other way. And I'm just looking at this package insert. I mean, formaldehyde is there. Can you?
So I want to cover the Pentacell vaccine, folks. At 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. So 3 times in the first 6 months of life. This is a very commonly used vaccine. It's a combo vaccine. So it covers for diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, but also it covers polio. And it's got another one. It's a busy slide. I think it's the Hib, pretty sure. But here's the thing. They tell you what's in it. This vaccine has 1.5 milligrams of aluminum. Remember, the FDA in 2000, well, you wouldn't know this. It's now buried. You cannot find it. In 2001, the FDA said you should not exceed 0.3 to 0.5 micrograms per kilogram of aluminum. Parentally. Now,
and in feeding tubes and certain things in the hospital, they make sure that it doesn't exceed that.
So it was because they multiple studies were published in the late 1990s showing that premature babies who were getting fed through IVs called TPN, total parental nutrition, were getting too much aluminum. It was causing loss of developmental skills. For every single day they were on TPN, they were losing developmental skills, so brain damage. So they figured it out. You shouldn't exceed 0.3 micrograms per kilogram. A baby newborn weighs, big baby, 10 pounds, 5 kilos. 5 times 0.3 is 15. 15 micrograms is the max per day, and we're going to inject 250 with just the Hep-B. But look at this pentacell. It's 1,500.
You're talking about the Hep-B that they give you on day one.
Day one, hour one, usually.
And even like with my nephew, who was a preemie, who was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old. Thank God we were able to reverse it by pulling out the toxins. But he was a 2-month preemie.
Yeah.
And they gave him that Hep B shot.
Yeah, they've now figured out you're not supposed to give it if they're less than 2.5 kilos. But really, nobody should be getting it. It's insanity. But this particular pentacell with 1,500 micrograms, because that's milligrams in the package insert, this is insanity. It's a massive dose of aluminum. We know aluminum causes autoimmunity. They actually use aluminum to induce autoimmunity in rats at levels very similar to what we're finding in these vaccines. Aluminum causes direct brain damage, and it totally shifts the immune system.
And when you say it causes autoimmunity in rats, can you elaborate on that?
No, they have rat models for diseases.
Yeah.
So if they want to study an autoimmune disease like type 1 diabetes or MS or anything that's autoimmune, there's now 100 plus autoimmune conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, you name it. People know what autoimmunity is now, a lot of people. To study it, they'll induce autoimmunity in the rats to have a rat model so they can try different drugs and all that. Mm-hmm. To create autoimmunity in the rats, they use aluminum.
Wow.
So let's put aluminum in childhood vaccines, why don't we? I hate aluminum because when it's injected in the body, it's a metal, little nanoparticles of this little metal, and it doesn't just stay in the muscle. Kind of the same story we heard with COVID. Oh, don't worry, it'll stay in the muscle. No, the white blood cells say, whoa, you're not supposed to be here. Macrophages, think of Pac-Man, gobble up the aluminum, carry it all over the body. White blood cells can get through the blood-brain barrier, go everywhere. White blood cells only live a few months. When they die, what do? They release that aluminum now wherever they were.
So I called it a Trojan horse.
Trojan horse gets the aluminum from the injection site into the brain, into the kidneys, into the wherever, where it causes massive inflammation and that inflammatory reaction. Again, the macrophages, white blood cells, what are you doing here, right? So now that's going on in the brain. So it's a universal finding in autistic brains. Almost every autistic brain is massively inflamed. If you wonder why kids are banging their heads and so irritable, their brain is on fire.
Brain hurts.
It hurts. It's on fire. So it's not just aluminum, though. Look at this. There's polysorbate 80. That is used in cancer chemotherapy to open the blood-brain barrier. It's put on intentionally so you can get cancer drugs into the brain if you have a brain tumor. So let's put it in vaccines to open the blood-brain barrier. Why? Makes no sense, right? And then we've got formaldehyde.
And again, this is the polysorbate 80 that they tell parents to look out for on labels in food products.
It's an emulsifier for food, and it's very bad for you, and it'll mess up your absorption, digestion, and blood-brain barrier. Other ingredients that are super common, formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a very sticky molecule. Anything it attaches to, the body's immune system goes, you can't be here. So again, attacks self, and you've got autoimmunity. And then you've got glutaraldehyde, similar story. Cow serum albumin, cow proteins. When you put a foreign organism's protein in your body again attacks. And so this is just this massive stimulus to create a massive immune response. It's all done to try to get an immune response against the little antigen, the thing that we want you to be immune against, right? The whole idea of vaccination, we're going to get some immunity against this invader.
But we're also mixing the DNA of a cow
it's insanity.
Into a human's body.
Right.
You know, and you have vegetarians that won't eat cows, but then they'll be okay with injecting it.
You may not want to inject cow protein, yes. Yeah. There's something specifically dangerous about injecting toxins. You know, we can eat a ton of toxic things. Aluminum, there's more aluminum in formula, way more than there is in a shot. That's what the CDC will tell you. So don't worry. But only 0.1% of ingested aluminum makes it into the body. When you inject, it's 100%.
It's in there. And also, some people say, well, how come every kid isn't autistic or doesn't get sick? Every kid has a different level of toxicity.
Yes.
Because they get toxins in the womb from their mother based on, like for me, I had a ton of mercury. But the other thing is not everybody methylates the same way.
Correct.
And so some of these kids that have a poor methylation, they're unable to detox their body from this overload of toxins. So that's why some of them get it worse than others, right?
Dr. Layla, you know too much. So you speak of methylation, and you've heard of obviously the MTHFR. It's an enzyme that many of us have a defect with how we methylate through that enzyme system. And if you don't methylate well, you're much more vulnerable to toxins. So not everybody's the same. But I wanted to mention something because people will say, well, not everybody gets autistic, so therefore vaccines don't cause autism. And my response, by the way, vaccines can and do cause autism. Other things can and do also. We know cigarette smoking is highly related to lung cancer, but not everybody who smokes cigarettes got lung cancer. Why? Again, it goes back to that genetic vulnerability and all the other toxins we're involved with.
I look at it as a tipping point.
It's a tipping point.
At some point, your body goes, crash, I'm done. I cannot handle 1 more ounce of toxic load.
Yeah.
And like I said, when both my daughters were born, they had an enormous amount of mercury. They've never been vaccinated. Where did they get the mercury from? I had a lot of mercury fillings that I didn't know to take out until afterwards. And so they received that.
Yeah. If you have mercury fillings and you're not pregnant yet, get them removed before you get pregnant, not while you're pregnant. The process of removal, even though it can be done carefully with damming and having the suction right to remove all that, there's still vapor and an ongoing exposure. But do it before you're pregnant. Get them out. I adopted a bunch of kids and I took them all to the dentist, and we had between the 8 kids, I think, and myself, I had 3 mercury fillings. My wife at that time had a few. I don't know. It was like 20, 30 mercury fillings that needed to be removed from all of us. It was, quite an ordeal. But it's important and it's worth doing. Let's go to the next slide because I want to also just wrap up this toxic thing. So here's aluminum, known to cause brain damage, promote autoimmunity, and cellular harm. Polysorbate 80, we talked about it allowing toxins to enter the brain. And then this phenoxyethanol, it's an alcohol preservative used in vaccines, has been associated with deaths. Formaldehyde, a known carcinogen, down to 0.1 part per million. This should not be in vaccines. Glutaraldehyde is a disinfectant and a biocide. Biocide means kill. It kills things. Great, let's put it in our vaccines. And then we talked about the antibiotics and the cow serum. We've got one other image we want to put up because you wanted people to see this.
The aluminum slide?
I don't know which one we're going to put up next. There you go.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the aluminum slide, but we can come back to that. This slide, the recommended doses that we just put on the screen, really, I mean, it tells you everything about the corporate greed. Because as you mentioned earlier, the 1986 Act made it completely, everybody was immune from liability, including pharmaceutical companies, doctors, nurses, everybody. So if you look at this slide, it became a free-for-all. It became an opportunity to make a lot of money with no liability.
Yep.
Think about this. Would you buy a car if you knew that that car manufacturer had zero liability? In fact, you remember the Pinto story where the cars used to blow up because
they were rear-ended, where the gas tank was, I think.
Yes, because of the way the gas tank was. And so they went out of business because of the number of deaths that they had, which were only a small amount.
Yep.
The pharmaceutical companies know that they would be out of business. They were able to finagle their way. Their lobbyists that they spent a tremendous amount of money got this act passed in 1986. And again, I am hopeful and praying that this act gets reversed, because when there's liability, you're not going to do this. I mean, talk to us about this schedule. I mean, when I was born in 76, and I remember getting 4 vaccines.
Yeah. So when my parents were born in the 40s, there were 2 vaccines. When I was born in the 50s and growing up as a child in the 60s, we had 3 vaccines. In the 80s, when my kids were being vaccinated, we were up to about 8 or 10. Look what happened by 2021 and then 2024. We went from about 60 some vaccines through childhood in 2021. We're now at 97 since they made the COVID annual now, along with the annual flu shots and everything else they've added. We're at almost 100 vaccines. If you're looking at this going, no, that doesn't add up, it's because when you see DPT, that's 3 shots in one. When you see MMR, that's 3 shots in one. They are actually 3 separate shots that were combined. So we're talking about how many different antigens you're exposed to. This is absolute insanity and goes a long way to explaining what we're going to show you that I found in my research. Because the pharmaceutical industry, the CDC, the NIH, they've never done proper placebo studies where you inject saline.
Yeah.
They look very short periods of time, 3 days, a week.
4 days I heard for the
For
Hep
Hep
B.
B.
4 days.
So even the COVID thing, they went a few months, 6 months, and then they got rid of the control group by allowing them to get the actual shot so we could destroy the possibility of knowing, how deadly that shot was. So that's one trick. Another trick is they only look for a few things. They don't look at all health outcomes. And so you've got no placebo group, only look for certain things, very short time trials, and is it any wonder that they don't really find much, right? So what we needed was vaccinated versus unvaccinated samples to see what was really going on.
And what's fascinating about your practice is you had a substantial number of unvaccinated kids and partially vaccinated because your book at the time, The Vaccine Friendly Plan, which you've written an amazing new book that, to anybody that has that old book, just throw it in the trash because this new book is what you want. And he did this from learning. He hired an independent scientist to analyze his own data. And that's what blew your mind.
Yeah.
Once you saw the truth based
Yeah.
on your own data, and again, this is a unique opportunity that you had in your practice because you had so many unvaccinated kids.
Right.
In other practice, there's a lot smaller percentage of unvaccinated kids. Why?
Yeah.
Because they're giving these babies a shot at day one. So your practice was very different. And we're going to get into that data a little bit later. But, I feel like the doctors around the world should have been calling you saying, like, tell me more.
Right. Everybody should be doing this study.
Yes.
My mom asked me one time, sadly she's passed, and it was most likely due to the COVID shots. Mom, don't get these jabs. I don't even like to call them vaccines, which they aren't. She did, and her lungs scarred up. But she used to always say, well, Paul, how can you be right and all the other doctors wrong?
Yeah.
Well, the reason is I got to see what other doctors didn't get to see because they would kick patients out of their practice.
Yeah.
I gathered this large cohort I had so many unvaccinated kids. By the time I did the study that we're going to show in a moment here, we had 561 unvaccinated kids, 2,700 variably vaccinated, basically vaccine-friendly plan. I didn't even have any CDC vaccinated kids at this point because we were just looking at the babies born into my practice.
That's amazing.
If you come into my practice as a new mom, we're going to talk about hepatitis B before you hit the hospital. Because when you sign into that hospital, you are inadvertently giving them permission to give the hepatitis B, and those nurses will give it sometimes in minutes.
I just want to talk to you new moms about this right now, because when you check into the hospital, you don't realize that you are already signing a form that the second you turn your head or you're tired, they can come in and boom, poke your baby because you have already signed the consent. And so I recommend every parent out there who understands what we're doing and realizes this is not what they want to do, please sign a document, make everybody aware like I did when I went in and I said, if you touch my baby with any shot, I will sue you. Everybody is on notice to not touch my child. And I did not sign any forms that allowed them, don't just sign. There's a lot of small print in there. Make sure you read everything and you cross out them being able to give anything to your child. Even if it's an emergency situation, you need to be told exactly what they're going to do before they do it. So don't sign your rights away.
The tricky part is these forms are electronic, so I don't know how you cross things out. Just know that it's in there. So you cannot leave your baby unattended, and you make sure every single person you see knows no hepatitis B. Vitamin K is another whole story that you may want to look into, and we cover this in this book as well. But the bottom line is they're trying to get that Hep B into your baby that first day of life. It's a quality measure for the hospitals, just like, remember, pediatricians have quality measures. The better you vaccinate, the quote, better hospital you are. It's insane.
And the vitamin K. I've heard moms ask me about it. It's just a vitamin. It's not just a vitamin. You remember we talked about formaldehyde? That's in there.
It's got, some of them have aluminum in it. It's insanity. Why would you put that in a vitamin? It's absolutely ridiculous.
But they camouflage it with the name vitamin.
Right.
You know?
So
like if you really
it's
wanna
not that
give
vitamin K is worthless, but there's safer ways to do it. You do not need to vaccinate on day one with a shot that could kill your baby. Black box warning, death is possible. Why? That's another whole story. By the way, you all, full disclosure, I am no longer licensed. That's a different story. And I don't diagnose or treat. Think of me as Professor Dr. Paul Thomas. I am just educating parents. It's always your decision. And if you're listening to this and you're unsure, at least pause. And if you're about to have a baby, at least don't do the hepatitis B. It is probably the most dangerous shot out there for a newborn, for sure. There's other things we're going to talk about that will make it clear.
Well, vitamin K, I've known a few people that their kids got bilirubin, jaundice,
Oh, it's super
impacted
common.
their liver from that vitamin K shot.
Super common.
Yeah. So let's, I want to jump to the next slide here. So I think what I'd like all of our viewers to do is take a screenshot of this, because the most important, I think, thing in this world is knowledge. You don't know what you don't know unless you know.
Yep. And you can't unknow what you know.
You can't unknow. And when you are empowered with knowledge, you can feel that confidence. Like when I step into an arena in the ER room, because my daughter, cracked her chin and she needed stitches. And when they're asking me about the vaccines, I can with confidence talk about vaccines, because these amazing books here I have read. Your new book that's out, like I'm so familiar with the information that I feel confident to look them in the eyes and say, I know what I'm talking about. This is not going to happen.
Right.
So these are 4 books that every parent should absolutely have. Your new book, which is based on actual data. You cannot deny actual data.
Right.
It's not woo-woo. It's real facts.
Yep.
And when you have this knowledge, you can you are empowered to make the right decisions for your child.
Yep. So folks, if you're going to go in and go toe-to-toe with a pediatrician about vaccines, you want them to be as informed as you are. Otherwise, well, regardless, you're in charge. But it puts you really in command when you have this knowledge. Take the books with you. Facts makes it easy. It's a simple read. You've got study after study after study. The references are all there. And then Dissolving Illusions was an eye-opener for anybody that's getting new into this idea that maybe these diseases of old weren't actually all eliminated from the vaccines. Because I was taught in medical school, smallpox, polio were miracles of the vaccine. Read Dissolving Illusions and you will realize, oh my goodness, they played a really nasty trick on us. They did the same thing with polio in India. I read an article out of India many years ago. They just redefined it and boom, polio was gone. There was even more, over 50,000 cases of non-polio paralytic disease in India the next year after their big vaccine campaign. It's smoke and mirrors, folks. Unvaxxed from Hooker and Kennedy is a masterpiece. Just here's what's out there on the vaxxed, unvaxxed. I've got that data in my book and other data. And then Turtles All the Way Down. There's a counterfeit book that looks almost like it, so make sure you're getting the Mary Holland version. This is the masterpiece that shows that every single study failed to have a placebo. They failed to look at all health outcomes, and they used a lot of manipulation to pull off what made it seem like the vaccines were actually helping, when in fact they were likely doing nothing but harm.
I want to just talk about Dissolving Illusions for a second, because when I bought this book and I started reading it, I just remember crying, because I remember being indoctrinated to the point where people would say, if it weren't for vaccines, measles would still be killing people, polio would still be killing people. And you start to believe it because you don't know any better. And there's some amazing graphs. I mean, she really dives into the data.
Yeah.
I'd love to meet this lady one day, but she shows you on the graphs where you can see every time the vaccine was introduced, it was pretty much already gone.
That disease was basically gone.
And like you said, they play a lot of tricks with changing what it means to have polio. And so, you know, back in the days in the 1800s, we didn't have a good, our water was filthy.
Right.
You know,
No
the
flush
sewage
toilet.
system was horrible.
Yep.
And so we were dying of bacteria and horrible things that we just didn't live in a clean environment.
Yeah.
And so as we started cleaning up the environment, these things became less and less. And yet pharmaceutical companies and the media basically pushed that these vaccines save lives.
Right.
And so when I talk to parents sometimes and they're like, they don't even want to hear it, because in their heart and soul, they've been told from the time that they could understand that vaccines save lives.
Right.
When you read that book, and it's filled with so much historical data and information, and even like certain things that were done in the 1800s in certain towns where 100% of the kids were vaccinated, yet the kids were still getting sick. I mean, it really shows you, and it basically unbrainwashes you to go, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right. We have to think critically. Think about this. I grew up in Africa from the age of 4 through high school in the heartland of Zimbabwe, a place where there were all sorts of diseases. We were hardly vaccinated, and yet I did fine. The kids who were dying of dysentery, so there was no access to IV fluids, so you get that terrible diarrhea. They were living with no flush toilet in village. We had a hole in the ground for our toilet. That's the reason people were dying. It wasn't because of the diseases for which we have vaccines. In fact, we have lots of data in my book and Vaxxed Unvaxxed that shows this.
Yeah, and you know, we talk a lot about terrain theory. And when your immune system is strong and your body is free from toxins and your gut is working strong, our bodies are miracles. God did not make a mistake.
No.
God didn't say, you know, pharmaceutical world, I totally made a mistake and my newborn baby that was born needs your drugs to fix it. I mean, if you just think about it logically, it doesn't make sense. And we've survived all these years without having the vaccines. Why is it that, again, what we're going to show this the slide, go to the next slide. How is it that we've got the vaccine death risk compared to the risk of the actual disease? I mean, if you look at it on this slide, talk to us about this a little bit.
Okay, so this data is in the back of my book in the appendix. There's a legal document that did the heavy lifting, 450 pages, to do the analysis of how deadly are the vaccines compared to the diseases for which you're vaccinating. And other than one exception, for every single disease for which we have a vaccine, the vaccine is exceedingly more dangerous, more deadly than the disease itself. And even the one where there's an exception, which in that chart was pertussis, I've got very clear evidence in other studies that shows that actually that's not the case. So pretty much for every single disease, the vaccine is far more dangerous than the disease. So then you have the people who say, well, but it's the vaccinated people that are protecting the unvaxxed. Yeah. Well, we haven't shown them my data yet. Yeah. And what my data showed was that it's the unvaxxed who don't get sick. Yeah. So who gets somebody else sick? A sick vaccinated child or a healthy unvaccinated child? Right. You catch disease from other diseased people. And so it is the highly vaccinated who are really a threat to grandma or a threat to someone who's got immunocompromised from cancer, chemotherapy, or whatever other cause of immune compromise. Yeah. We are harming our children beyond belief.
And the other thing that I found interesting is, as adults, if you go to the doctors and you test for, you know, these vaccines, they're no longer in our body. So how is it adults aren't dying across the world because they no longer have these vaccines in their body?
Right.
That's another big scam.
Right. So that destroys this whole notion of, well, it's herd immunity that's protecting. The adults aren't protected anymore. Yeah. So there's no way we have reached a threshold for herd immunity. It's a scam to say that the vaccines have eliminated the diseases or are keeping these diseases away. We could all stop vaccinating right now, and other than a few diseases like maybe measles, mumps, rubella, which might come back to some extent, but they're not going to be a threat.
But I've also heard and I heard this from Bobby Kennedy, that when you get measles, you actually strengthen your immune system.
You
so
do.
if
You
get
have
it
less cancer.
Yeah.
Measles is not a threat in the form it's in now. Yeah. Just as with COVID, people remember that Wuhan was more dangerous than Delta, which was more dangerous than Omicron, which was more these organisms, as they mutate, become less and less dangerous. That's how they survive, if you want to think of it that way. So, yeah, you have nothing to fear of measles or any of them, really. And the few rare cases of things that can kill you, say with meningitis or whatever, it's treatable. We have antibiotics still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember as a kid, we had chickenpox parties.
Yep.
And it was
we should
like,
go back to that.
Get your chickenpox,
Yep.
because you were going to have a stronger immune system as an adult. And that's the whole idea, of that your own immunity is way better than injecting with a drug.
Yeah.
So let's jump to the next slide here. I want to talk about this slide. So, I know somebody who's got a 3-week-old baby.
Right.
And I was like, please, whatever you do, watch these videos, read these books before you take your baby in for the 2-month vaccine. And it just really kind of, I feel like I'm on a personal mission to create this awareness, because every parent that doesn't vaccinate their child is one of God's children saved.
Yeah.
And I just want you to kind of hit on, what does a 2-month-old baby receive?
Yeah, let's cover it. And this slide is just one of the vaccines. So at the 2-month visit, babies are going to get the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. That's one shot.
One shot, 3 in 1.
3 in 1, or unless they get like that pentacell we were talking about, in which case it's 5 in 1.
Mm-hmm.
Diphtheria, there hasn't been a case in a couple decades, and before that it was 1 case every other year in the United States. Diphtheria is gone. You don't have to worry about it. Tetanus, there hasn't been a child who's died of tetanus in over a decade. It's 55 and older, and even then there's only 10, 20, 30 deaths per year, if that. And it's treatable. Even if you got a dirty wound and your child was babies don't go around getting dirty wounds, by the way. But let's say you've got an older kid and you're worried when they get a dirty wound. You can go to the emergency room, get immune globulin, antibiotic, and your child will be fine. Pertussis, the vaccine no longer works. It actually makes you more vulnerable to infection, and it doesn't prevent you from transmitting it to anybody else. So there's no reason to get that one. Then we've got the Hib, and the Hib is covering an organism that's gone. The Haemophilus has shifted now to other strains, type A, C, not type B. Then you've got pneumococcal. Okay, they came out with a new Prevnar 20. Woohoo, exciting. I was actually thinking, okay, maybe they finally made an improvement. And they did. They added a few more antigens. But I went to the package insert. It's always about risk-benefit. Yeah. Looked in that package insert, and 5% of the people who got the new Prevnar 20 had serious adverse events, some of which could be death. 5% of the old Prevnar 13. 1 in 20 chance of a serious adverse event.
It's like Russian roulette with your baby's life.
No, thank you. I'll pass.
Russian roulette.
So, and then there's rotavirus live drops that actually give your baby the opportunity to get this intestinal infection, because they're putting a live infective, diarrhea-causing organism. Yeah. It just didn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. So that 2-month marker, you've got this fragile little immune system that's as fragile as can be, because it's growing, and you're just putting all of these drugs in it that your baby doesn't need.
Yeah.
It's baffling.
As we've traveled the country, we joined the CHD bus that was touring the country, and we got to meet so many parents who lost their 2-month-old or their 4-month-old after the vaccines. Often it was the next day, or certainly within 48 hours. You take in a healthy baby for a well visit, and you get them in a casket 2 days later. It's a lot to deal with, and it's, you can't take it out. So
can't reverse
you
it.
really got to think long and hard about these risks, benefits, and make a decision that's based on information.
I want to talk to you about SIDS, because I remember as a new mom, they were like, the doctors were saying SIDS can be from putting your baby on its belly. SIDS can be from co-sleeping. They scare you. They terrify you.
Yep.
When all the while, SIDS is really from these vaccines. Will you talk to us about
Yeah, let me explain
SIDS?
this. So there's one data set, and there's a whole chapter in the new book, VaxFacts, on SIDS. There's one data set where 97% of the SIDS happened in the first the first 10 days after vaccines. The other 3% in the next 10 days. So 100% of SIDS in that particular data set happened after the vaccines, not the weeks before a vaccine. There are 6 published peer-reviewed studies in the literature that look at the timing of SIDS relative to vaccines. You put them all together, and 78% of the deaths happen in the first week after the vaccines. SIDS is killing babies. Now, there's a recent publication that shows how many babies are dying of SIDS or SUDI, sudden unexplained death in infants. Okay, there's just 2 different labels for the same thing. Your baby dies and you don't know why.
And then the police come to your house and arrest you.
You've smothered your baby. So they'll put smothering. There's about a 1 in 1,000 chance that your baby in America today dies unexpectedly, out of the blue. America has one of the highest SIDS rates in the country.
Let's pull that slide up.
So we are highest in vaccinating infants, and we have the highest SIDS rate. Imagine a 1 in 1,000 chance that by going in and getting your vaccines, you're going to lose your kid. Are you going to do that?
Look at this slide. We are in the United States of America, and we have the highest infant mortality rate.
Yes.
This is the country that's supposed to have all the drugs, all the everything that your baby could need, and yet we are number 1 on this list.
And it's been that way for a long time, and it's not getting any better.
It's not getting any better because the vaccine schedule is getting worse and worse. How is it?
We are number 1 for the number of vaccines given to infants as well. I think Brazil just surpassed us this past year by adding meningococcal to babies. But this is a massive assault on their immune system and on their immature brain. And we're literally killing babies.
Yeah.
But I want your viewers to get an idea of what else vaccines are causing. Yeah. So if we can go to the slide that shows all the graphs of the data from my practice.
So go previous here,
there.
Right here. Yeah, Dr. Thomas, you went over this in detail, and our link below is going to go over each one of these slides, but I want you to explain to us, again, this is based on real life data. You cannot argue with it. Explain to us what this slide is all about.
So Layla, when the vaccine-friendly plan was written, the medical board came after me and said, prove that the vaccine-friendly plan is as safe as the CDC schedule. Yeah. So I hired an outside expert, and we pulled the data of every baby born into my practice. This is real-world data. This isn't some manipulation of other studies. No. This is what I was seeing in my practice. And for each of these graphs, we took the unvaxxed, 561, multiply that by 5 so that it was the exact same number as the 2,700 vaccinated, okay?
Partially vaccinated.
Partially vaccinated.
Because they read your vaccine-friendly plan book that you no longer...
This would look a lot worse if we were looking at unvaxxed compared to CDC. Oof. Okay? The orange are the partially vaccinated. The blue is the unvaxxed. And there's something really important to notice here. All the allergic conditions, asthma, allergies, allergic rhinitis, eczema, these are allergy conditions, are sky high in the vaccinated and very low in the unvaxxed. Next, all the developmental issues, developmental delays, learning disabilities, behavior problems, sky high in the vaccinated, almost absent in the unvaxxed. There's no ADD or ADHD in the unvaxxed in this data set. I mean, that's a lot of information, but here's the clincher. The vaccinated are sicker. More ear infections, more eye infections, more lung infections, more sinus infections, more skin infections, and more all infections combined. Who gets other people sick? It's sick people. Yeah. The unvaxxed are that protection. They're the ones that are keeping everybody else safe. Mm-hmm. So you should not have to apologize to anyone that you've chosen to make an informed decision not to vaccinate your child. Let natural immunity. We were made wonderfully to handle all the nonsense that comes at us, even bioweapons like COVID, which that's another show.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd like to also add pregnant moms. Again, this is talked about in your book. When I was pregnant, they were trying to give me a whooping cough shot, and I was just like, they tell you not to eat tuna.
Right.
From a can because of mercury. You want to inject my body with something while my baby's trying to grow free from toxins?
Yeah. So pregnancy is a special time. Moms know that sacred time in the womb. You don't inject toxins. All vaccines have massive toxins. They cause immune activation, which we know causes schizophrenia, autism, brain development problems. So please, while you're pregnant, use that same common sense of eating healthy. Also, don't inject toxins into your body, and you will have a much greater chance of keeping that pregnancy and having a normal baby.
And I just want to elaborate on one thing, that when this study came out, it was actually retracted because pharma hit you hard, the medical board hit you hard. They tried to come after your license.
Yeah.
You had to spend a tremendous amount of money fighting to keep your license. But at the end of the day, what was the decision that you made regarding your license?
So in the end, I decided to turn it in. I wanted to be able to speak the truth, and literally they were burying me with legal stuff weekly, and it was going to be $500,000 to $1 million in fines. And in Oregon, it's a kangaroo court. So even you go in front of the judge, if I was to win on every single count, and they had listed hundreds of bogus charges, if I was to somehow win on every single count, I would still have the board would still have the option of saying, well, we're still taking your license. Yeah. And you need to pay us all our fees for the last 4 years that we've been investigating you, and all your own fees for the last 4 years. It became unsustainable.
It's like the drug cartel. Like
it was
control you.
The moment I made that decision, was like, whew, relief. I can speak the truth and not worry about trying to keep my license.
So I'd like to go to the slide where any viewer can find you. They can get a consultation. They can go into deeper in their understanding of what the vaccines. They can ask you any questions. Your beautiful wife, Dee Dee, she also does some amazing coaching. We have kidsfirstforever.com.
So kidsfirst, the number 4ever.com is the website where we are offering coaching and so much more. This is your opportunity to actually get a session with me. I don't diagnose or treat, but I can sure help you figure out what you might want to do by providing you the necessary information that perhaps, well, it's really hard to get all the information you need when even if you've got all the right books. Yeah. It's just so overwhelming.
You have it. You're a wealth of knowledge.
This is what I do. This is what I've done.
45 minutes with you, yep. You're like, you feel good about making the right decision. You will
be comfortable about the decision you're going to make, and I will support you in whatever that decision is. I'm not there to try to coerce you in one way or the other, just to give you the information in a way you can understand it. Mm-hmm. And Dee Dee does the same, not just for vaccines, but actually for anything emotional, mental, spiritual. She's an incredible coach.
Yeah. And let's also go to the book. You'll go to your book again, because you've got a great website there that's got facts that you can access for free without even buying the book. But please, this amazing book, the Vax Facts book, is out. Tell us a little bit about it, and please support Dr. Thomas with his, the fact that he was so courageous to fight for our kids, supporting him and buying this book, and also equipping yourself with the knowledge.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this
is the book I wish I had read from the beginning. You have everything in here, including a chapter for adults. So this is not just for parents. This is for anyone who's considering a vaccine. Read this book before you get the vaccine. If you're already scheduled for an appointment, postpone it. Get the book. Get your information. You won't regret it. It's an easy read, and it's got a wealth of information in the appendices, lots of easy tables to follow. And then you can also visit kidsfirstforever.com for individual coaching if you so desire.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. I appreciate you being here today and giving us this wealth of knowledge, and I hope that there are young moms out there that will call you up if they are still not convinced, and really just get all the information that they need to feel comfortable and confident in their decision.
Thank you, Layla. It's been a pleasure being on the Layla Show.